Hi class, I'm going to talk about the Imago Day in more detail now, the image of God, looking at the chapters that you're reading and talking about possible views that would actually fit very nicely, potentially, with the theory of evolution, where science and the Christian faith would match up well, where we would have integration, right? I don't want conflict. I don't want independence. I don't just want dialogue, although we've been having dialogue so far in this class. I'm looking for myself to have a worldview where I'm integrating my theological views with the best of science, right? So Imago Dei, remember, refers to the image of God. In the introduction that you read, 4 views were presented. I'm going to go through each briefly, and then we'll focus on today's reading, which is on the functional view. So I'm going to cover that one first. So the functional view. When you hear the word functional view of the Imago Dei, function is like having a purpose, having a set of goals, a calling, a set of tasks given to us by God. So the functional view makes the argument that, what does it mean to say humans are created in the image of God? Well, it means God has given humans a very unique purpose, a very unique function to fulfill on earth. The functional view, right? We've been chosen by God as a species to fulfill certain purposes that only we can fulfill, and in that way we are divine image bearers. A great book, very popular book called The Evolution of Adam. It's by Peter Enns. He's a biblical scholar who's looking at biblical interpretation and the theory of evolution. It's wonderful. But he writes, in Genesis, the Imago Dei, does not refer to a soul or a psychological or spiritual quality or qualities that separates humans from animals. He says that's not what Genesis is doing. Rather, the book of Genesis is using the Imago Dei to refer to humanity's role of ruling God's creation, having dominion over God's creation, and being God's representatives here on earth. So humans are created in the image of God because we have this unique role to fulfill, according to Peter Enns, right? And that's why it's a functional view. This would be perfectly compatible with evolution. We don't need to worry about when does the soul enter the picture, or we have these unique traits that no other animals have because we don't seem to have those things. Most things that we possess, non-human animals have to some degree or another. In this case, God can talk about the entire species at some point in history and say, I have a role for you to fulfill, a calling, a function for you to fulfill. And so that would fit with evolutionary theory. A second view is the structural view. Now this is the view that says the image of God refers to some quality or faculty inherent in the human. We have a soul. That's what makes us create the image of God. That's a quality or faculty we have that no other animal has. That's why we're created in the image of God. That's the structural view. Or we are creative, loving, relational, free, rational, intelligent. Those are qualities that humans possess. If that's what it means to be created in the image of God, then that's the structural view, a quality or qualities that make us more like the image of God than any other piece of creation. Again, there are issues here with evolution because non-human animals have freedom to some degree. Non-human animals are creative to some degree, rational, problem-solving, moral, conscious, self-aware, intelligent, communal, relational. Like non-human animals have all of those attributes to some degree. Evolution says there's this slow chain of being that we are connected, that we are a part. So whatever humans have wouldn't come from nowhere, wouldn't drop out of the sky as if God created us separate from every other animal. But we would have that lineage, that biological lineage, and so this view doesn't connect as well with evolution as some others. The relational view says that the image of God, the Imago Dei, is to be understood as a relationship within which humans sometimes stand Whenever, like a mirror, we obediently reflect God's will in our lives and in the world. When I'm in right relationship with God and I'm listening to God and I am obedient, I image God to the world. John Wesley says this quite a bit. He kind of has this relational view. When I listen and submit and am obedient to God, then I image God to the world. When I am selfish, cruel, violent, then I'm hiding the image of God within me, right? So it's a particular relationship, how I stand in relationship to God, that determines whether I'm now in the image of God or not. Said differently, every human has the ability, the capability of imaging God to the world, but how we choose to act determines whether we image God or if we hide it, right? And then lastly, the dynamic view. The dynamic view of the Imago Dei says, God creates humans and we are not in the image of God yet. We have the potential, and that will be fulfilled in the eschaton, in the end, when Christ returns, when all is complete. Then we will fully image God as humans. So it's like an aspirational or eschatological term that points us to the future, when we will be made complete beings. So one way of thinking about the Imago Dei is an eschatological view, which the book refers to as the dynamic view. So we've got multiple ways. The relational view seems to fit with evolution. Once I have the ability to connect to God, once I have the ability to have religious experience, right? Once evolution allows for that in the world, now I can either be in right relationship with God and image God to the world, or I can break relationship with God and hide the image of God in the world. But evolution wouldn't impact that view. And then the same with the dynamic view. If God is bringing us through a long process of potential to actual, from where we are now to where God wants us, through evolution, through the pursuit of holiness, justification, and salvation, through this long journey, right? And God is pointing us to that time when we will be fully divine image bearers. Well, that eschatological view would be perfectly coherent or consistent with evolution. The one view that seems to have problems is the structural view. But that's also the most common. Today I want to talk more specifically about the functional view. This is what you read. So I want to say a few things connected to the reading so that we're clear. The functional view makes this argument. If we take Genesis 1 seriously, what we see is humans being given a kingly role in the world. In the ancient Near East, the book keeps using the term A-N-E, ancient Near East. In the ancient Near East, if you were a pharaoh, an emperor, a king, a ruler, you were a divine human. They built statues of you, worshipped you in some contexts, bowed down before you. You were God's representative in the world. You were a divine image bearer if you were one of these rulers. And these rulers all have one thing in common. They have dominion. Dominion over their empire, their subjects, the people that are under them, right? Dominion. This is about kings, emperors, rulers, and what they have power over. When you look at Genesis 1, let us create humans to be divine image bearers and give them dominion over creation, all of creation. What do you know? There's a total match between the context with which Genesis was written, the ancient Near East, kings who believed they were divine humans and the dominion they had. But Genesis, the reading says, democratizes this. It's a radical, it's totally different than other faiths of this time. The Jewish faith says, no, every human's created in the image of God, not just the Pharaoh, not just the emperor, not just the king. Wow, radical, right? We all have dominion over creation, not just the emperor, ruler, king. This is a democratization of the image of God. I think this is so powerful. Each one of us, the functional view would argue, has been called by God to play a particular role in the world, namely, to represent God well in the world. Dominion here is to have loving responsibility for all of creation, to treat it with a kind of power, dominance, love, and respect, right, that it deserves, to be in right relationship with. So we have a very particular function we're supposed to play in the world. And I want to remind you of Peter N's quote here. Genesis, regarding the Imago Dei, does not refer to a soul or psychological or spiritual quality. It refers to humanity's role of ruling, having dominion over God's creation as God's representative. That's what each of us is called to do well. That's the function we're supposed to play. This is totally harmonious with evolution. I think it makes wonderful biblical sense, given the context that Genesis was written in, and it really helped me understand the Imago Dei better. It's a moral calling. We have a moral role to play in the world. And I want to unpack this just a little bit further. N.T. Wright, a biblical scholar and theologian, says it this way, and I think he says it well. Humans are created by God in the image of God to be this middle creature. We're in the middle, okay? And that means that God creates humans. When creation looks at us, right? When creation looks at us, they should see an imperfect glimpse of God. We should be God's image bearers in the world. That's the function we play. So how we love, how we treat one another, the communities we create, the role we play in the world should image God to the world. When they see us, when they see the church, when they see our communities, they should get an imperfect glimpse of God. However, we also are supposed to image the world back to God. When God looks at us, God should see the best of creation, right? God should see us living as creatures worshiping God, loving God, honoring God. So creation gets a glimpse of God, and God gets the best glimpse of creation, and humans play the role of the two-way creature to image God to the world. We're playing that function. So this is a calling. Will we image God well to the world and take up our calling and live into the image of God? Or will we hide the image and will we live selfishly? Will we not reveal the best of creation, right? So this is something to consider. But one of the important facets for this class is, at any point in evolutionary history, God could choose a species to play this role. God chose humans, given, I think, our ability to connect to God. And so we might connect the functional view to the structural view in some way. But I hope this helps. If you have any questions at all, let me know, and we'll keep talking.